For hundreds of years, the Ars Goetia has captivated the minds of occultists, skeptics, and people with curious minds. Now, this infamous grimoire is section 1 of the Lesser Key of Solomon, and I'm going to give you a bit of background knowledge as to how this text came into popular occult culture, why it's so important, and then we will look at the first spirit that is named. So the Ars Goetia gives very detailed descriptions and instructions on how to summon and often command 72 different spirits, and this was done explicitly for them to serve the legendary King Solomon. So in these videos you're going to hear me use the word demon or demonic or daemon or even divine to describe these spirits. None of these spirits are what you would call the traditional cinematic fire and brimstone devil demonic. What you will find with these spirits are that there is something a lot deeper, a lot more intriguing and interesting, and strangely a lot more helpful with them as well. So the Ars Goetia is the first section of the legendary 17th century grimoire, the Lesser Keys of Solomon. And this mysterious text has no recognized or validated author, but it is definitely one of the most influential occult pieces of literature that we have ever had. Now, the term Goetia is derived from the Greek word Goetia, and this means sorcery or magic. And these rituals that are contained within the Lesser Keys of Solomon are designed specifically to evoke and control these spirits. Now, not in an evil way, it's seen as almost befriending them or making them perform your will, and that could be for hidden knowledge, it could be wealth, it could be all sorts of things. And the way that the spirits are broken down into certain orders usually dictates what kind of service, if you want to call it that they can provide for the magician or sorcerer. So the demons that are contained within the Ars Goetia are not simply just evil spirits. These are much deeper and much more complex than that. They're often described as wise, intelligent, knowledgeable, often very helpful, and can assist with things like hidden knowledge, with breaking down barriers that you may have, achieving wealth, achieving peace with yourself as well. Just as a side note, and I have mentioned this in other videos, but maybe this is your first time watching any of my videos, so this should be addressed. The word demon has kind of been, excuse the pun, demonized over the years. It originates from the word daemon, which means divine. So a lot of these spirits, going back thousands of years, whether it's to ancient Sumeria or any kind of ancient civilization like that, would often work with these spirits as just part of their daily life. They were never considered evil in any way. Potentially dangerous sometimes if you worked with them incorrectly, but not evil. But as we've gone through the years and up to modern times, spirits like Asmodeus, like Lilith, have developed a sort of demonized reputation, and the knowledge has kind of been sort of skewed slightly as to what they actually are. So I just thought that's worth mentioning, because you say demon and most people kind of recoil in horror of, oh my god, demons. But I use that word, but I use it correctly, I think, and I just see it as divine spirits. So here is my copy of the Lesser Key of Solomon, and as I say, the first section is the Ars Goetia. Each spirit listed in here has its own sigil, it has its own title, and then the known abilities are also listed. So as a modern grimoire, the Lesser Key of Solomon, and in particular the Ars Goetia section at the front, has gone through several editions, and various authors and editors have done their own translations of the ancient texts and source materials. The copy that I have is a mixture of the 1898 Arthur Edward Waite copy of this book and the 1904 Alistair Crowley edition as well. So that's a brief sort of description of what the Lesser Key of Solomon and the Ars Goetia is. So let's look at the first spirit listed, and that is Baal, or some would pronounce as Bael, or some would pronounce as Baal. I tend to go for Baal. I don't think the pronunciation particularly matters too much. I think that's kind of an individual choice on how you pronounce that, but I go with Baal. So let me just read the small section in the Ars Goetia on Baal, and this gives some sort of insight into how this spirit was perceived at the time. Baal is the first principal spirit, and is a king ruling in the east. He maketh thee to go invisible. He ruleth over 66 legions of infernal spirits. He appeareth in divers shapes, sometimes like a cat, sometimes like a toad, and sometimes like a man, and sometimes all of these forms at once. He speaketh hoarsely. This is his character, which is used to be worn as a layman before him, who call him forth, or else he will not do thee homage. Not particularly clear, quite hard to read as well, particularly if you're dyslexic like me. So the more modern knowledge and experience of working with the spirit. So Baal is given the rank of king. His dates are the 21st to the 30th of March. He is specifically a nighttime spirit to work with. His direction is south, not east, but we now work traditionally south with Baal. His tarot is the Two of Wands. Planetary alignment is with the sun. If you were going to use metals as a form to work with him or as an offering, it would be gold. He is the element of fire. The colours to work with him would be yellow. Incense would be frankincense. And the N is Ayer Sekor On Kar Baal. Now, Ns are a much more modern thing that really seem to have only come into the occult world in the way that we use them now. I would say particularly from sort of the mid to late 90s. I believe S. Connolly is the main person to bring that into the zeitgeist of occultism. When people were using Solomonic magic, we didn't really have the approach of how certainly I work with spirits, which is a relationship. You would bring the spirit into your circle and you would force them. You would do things like threaten to burn the sigil, threaten to destroy the sigil, or threaten to trap them, that kind of thing, and make them work for you. And it's just my opinion, but I think that's how quite a few of the spirits got a bad name. Because imagine if, someone dragged you out your house, dragged you into their house, and demanded that you bring them lots of money or knowledge, and they're not going to let you leave until you do. You're probably going to be not very kind to someone that does that, and possibly even kick their arse a bit as well. And I think that's what happened with that kind of interaction with these spirits, and where some of the sort of bad press came from. Now, one thing about Bael I will say is always perform a circle. And if you can with Bael, don't just do a mental circle like an elemental circle or protection circle. Actually have a physical circle if you can have one. It's absolutely essential to working with him. It traps that energy in there, and it allows that energy to be contained so that you can work safely with him. I know I'm repeating myself from other videos, but these protection circles are not to protect you from the spirit that you're choosing to work with. That would defeat the purpose. It would be, I call them spiritual or psychic condoms. It stops. If you're trying to have a baby, wearing a condom is not going to help, is it? Even though it does bring protection. So that's kind of, how I see these protection circles. It's protection from yourself, from the chaos of your mind, from the chaos of your subconscious, the fear, the self-doubt, all of these things that quite often your brain is constantly doing. That's where protection is absolutely essential. It's from yourself. I would even go as far to say to combine this with the lesser banishing ritual as well, to really make sure that you are as free from any of these potential dangers of yourself before working with particularly Bael, but any of the big spirits. So why would you work with Bael? Well, the invisibility bit that I mentioned that comes directly from the Ars Goetia is absolutely relevant, but it's not invisibility in the way that you make yourself invisible and people can't see you. It's more about privacy. It's more about not being seen, particularly by certain people, if that's what you want or need, and the ability to move freely without having the attention of people, without having eyes on you. That's what the invisibility part of the Ars Goetia is referring to. You cannot make yourself invisible. That's not possible. But you can influence energetically to not have eyes upon you. That could be useful for many, many different things. Bael is also very, very good at helping with wealth, particularly creative wealth. That seems to be the aspect that he is really, really good at, assisting people achieving what they want. And let's take into account what does wealth actually mean. It doesn't always mean financial. Wealth can mean various different things. But if you are a creative person, you're working in the arts, whether that's writing, whether that's music, painting, sculpture, anything like that, Bael would be one of the best spirits to work with to achieve that goal that you want, and that's success, which then brings wealth. He can also help with creativity if you're struggling, if you're not sure of what direction to go, or you've hit that wall where you're suffering from writer's block. Bael is very, very good at helping with that creative process. He can also help with what's called matters of the heart, so relationships, love. I wouldn't say in a way that is to bring people together. That would be more Lilith, Rosea, even Asmodeus would be more suitable. But if there are issues, Bael can be really, really helpful in confronting those issues, particularly if you have, some baggage from the past and it's rearing its ugly head into your current relationships and causing problems. Bael can be really, really helpful with you defeating those, again, I'll use the word demons, that are holding you back in your relationships. One thing as well, personally, I think it's kind of essential to wear his sigil whilst summoning, whilst invoking, I think is maybe the more correct word. It's Baal is one of the few spirits that I've worked with where it's a very formal procedure. You can't sort of improvise it, particularly in the beginning while you're building that relationship. You want to have the circle. You probably want to do a cleansing beforehand, probably something like the lesser banishing as well. You want to really, really have your mind focused and unfiltered on why you are reaching out, why you are making contact. Wearing the sigil for me is part of that, so I would suggest you could even get something like dragon's blood ink, or you could use ashes, and you could even potentially draw the sigil on your chest area. Whatever works for you. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong. I'm just sharing my experience and my mistakes in this field. And I think it's always better to, when you make mistakes and things don't work, share it, because people hopefully then don't copy your mistakes. So that was my introduction to the Ars Goetia and the first and apparently one of the main spirits listed in there, Baal. There are 72 spirits, so I've got 71 more to go over, and I'll be covering each of them from the perspective of my experience and why you would work with them, what are the mistakes not to make, all of that kind of thing. So hopefully you will find this useful, and as ever, if you've made it this far, thank you. Like, subscribe, whatever you want to do, but thank you for watching.